Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 171 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I found sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. A quick apology for missing an episode last week. Due to the flu and the fact that this is a one-man show, made recording a new episode next to impossible. I'll try to avoid that in the future, but thank you for your patience when such unforeseen circumstances arise. We'll be into February when the next episode comes out, so it's time to do January's shout out to my patrons. Thank you as always to the current list: Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lily Breen, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. I truly appreciate your continued support. And if you want to join in with helping the show out, it's just $1 per month, and that gets you this monthly shout out, as well as audio outtakes and full scripts of every written show. One last thing before we get started on the regular show. I want to respond to a message I got from Joel L., who you may remember from other questions and as the co-host during the WandaVision deep dive. He just caught up on the Loki deep dive, and while I briefly mentioned the God of Stories being a title for Loki in the comics, I didn't go into any detail, and he was hoping I would now, since many others also picked up on that title and have applied it to the current MCU Loki. Of course, Joel. We have to turn our eyes back to 2014/2015 with the title Loki, Agent of Asgard. In that book, Loki, currently in his semi-heroic Kid Loki form, was recruited by the All-Mothers of Asgard, with a promise to erase one of his crimes for each mission of theirs he successfully completed. And when I say erase, I mean erase. It would be completely gone from the memories and history. During this time, he ended up first allied, then friends with, a woman named Verity Willis, who possessed the magical ability to see through any lie, which fascinated Loki. While this was going on, Kid Loki was also dealing with King Loki, the Loki of a possible future who wanted to make sure that it came to pass. In their final battle, Kid Loki experienced ego death, where different aspects of himself confronted him. King Loki wanted this Loki to return to his classic God of Lies aspect again, but Loki rejected that, and that's when he came to the realization that a lie is nothing more than a story we tell, and took on his new title as God of Stories. Part of the powers granted to him with this new title include being able to weave a story so strong that it actually becomes true, allowing him to retcon people's histories, including his own. Loki has kept the God of Stories sobriquet from then on, and has taken a mostly heroic turn in his stories since then. So when the MCU Loki said he'd rewrite the story, you can understand where people with knowledge of this part of Loki's history would make that connection. Now, let's finish up the stories of the Green Lantern replacements we've been discussing for a number of episodes. There's only 2 left, and while their stories start out separate from one another, they are later entwined, so I think it makes sense to cover both in the same episode. Since I've been going chronologically with these, we'll start with Simon Baz. Simon is a Lebanese immigrant who grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, echoing the background of his co-creator Jeff Johns, who is half Lebanese and was raised in Detroit. Artist Doug Monk was the other co-creator of the New Lantern. He made a brief cameo in the New 52 Free Comic Book Day special edition, but his first full appearance was in Green Lantern number 0, which came out a year after the New 52 reboot had started. Now, as many of you may remember from previous episodes, episode 1 in particular, the Green Lantern title was one of the few books that didn't have its history completely rewritten. So in this new continuity, Hal Jordan had been the Green Lantern of Earth for some time. But due to mostly pre-Flashpoint stories, he was now reliant on a ring given to him by Sinestro, who had unwillingly rejoined the Green Lantern Corps. When the pair of Green Lanterns were in a battle with Black Hand, their rings ended up fusing and finding a new recruit, which of course turned out to be Simon. While Simon had the ability to overcome great fear, one of the prerequisites to being a Green Lantern, Simon had not been on the side of the law for most of his life, getting involved with both street racing and car theft. Shortly before his recruitment by Hal and Sinestro, Simon had stolen a van, discovering only afterwards that it had a bomb in it. While being pursued by police, he drove the van into a factory he knew was abandoned, having been laid off from it when it closed. Surviving the crash and explosion, he's taken into custody, and it's while he's being interrogated by feds, who believe him a terrorist, that the ring shows up and breaks him out of jail. It takes a while, but eventually Simon discovers a message that Sinestro and Hal left for him in the ring, which leads him to free the pair from the Dead Zone. While he proved himself as much a hero as any of the Green Lanterns, Simon was still somewhat of an outcast among the hero set, having fought against the Justice League early in his career when they went to him to find out Hal's whereabouts, then later joining Amanda Waller's more corrupt Justice League of America. For most of his superhero career, Simon carried a gun in addition to his Green Lantern ring, for fear that the ring would fail him someday. However, during a team-up with Batman, Simon decided to turn the gun over to Commissioner Gordon, and has been more self-reliant ever since. Sort of, but we'll get there in a bit. We have to now move on to the other Green Lantern for this episode, Jessica Cruz. Jessica doesn't truly belong on this list because she was never technically a replacement for anyone, but considering her history, it does feel appropriate to discuss her, especially for me who has a special connection to her. Before Jessica ever got involved with superpowers and such, she had already lived a very traumatic life. While on a hunting trip, Jessica and some of her friends came across 2 men in the woods burying a body. Jessica escaped, but her friends were not so lucky and were murdered by the pair. Jessica refused to leave her house after this, suffering from post-traumatic stress-induced anxiety and agoraphobia, both of which are conditions I have, not from post-traumatic stress, but generalized anxiety disorder and mild agoraphobia. It was this fear that led to the Ring of Volthoom taking control of her. The ring is an artifact of Earth 3, where evil versions of the Justice League reign as the Crime Syndicate. The Syndicate had invaded Prime Earth, but Power Ring, the Green Lantern equivalent, had died, and so the ring, and the genie inside of it, went to find a new host. It was able to torture Jessica into doing what it wanted at first, but with the help of Batman and the rest of the Justice League, Jessica was able to take more control over the ring and joined the League as a member, calling herself also Power Ring. About a year and a half later, in real-world time, probably only a few weeks in the DC universe, Jessica seemed to sacrifice her life in an effort to save Flash from Black Racer, the DC universe's incarnation of death created by Jack Kirby in the New Gods books. However, it turns out it was Volthoom, the entity possessing the ring, that was killed instead, and shortly after she wakes up, a Green Lantern ring comes to Jessica and inducts her into the Corps, giving Earth 6 active Green Lanterns. Quite the outlier from the 2 Green Lanterns per sector rule that had been established just a few years earlier. After Jessica became an official Green Lantern, and with Simon still in the learning phase himself, Hal decided to test the pair using a Manhunter training droid. Unhappy with the outcome, Hal decided to force the pair to work together by fusing their batteries into one, only allowing them to recharge their rings as a pair. For over 50 issues, the two starred together in the Green Lanterns title, mostly staying on Earth while the other Green Lanterns patrolled space in their various capacities. However, in the final issue of that title, number 57, Jessica decided to explore space for a time. I couldn't find an exact moment where Hal lifted the restriction on their rings, but I have to assume he did at some point as Simon chooses to stay on Earth. Since their co-starring title came to an end in early 2018, we haven't seen a lot of Simon, despite him being the one to stay on Earth. Jessica, on the other hand, was assigned to patrol the so-called Ghost Sector by the Guardians, a section of space that had been hidden in the past by the Coluans, the super-intelligent alien race that Brainiac belongs to. And as such, she ran into Cyborg, Starfire, and Azrael when they decided to investigate the Ghost Sector and why it had suddenly reappeared. Jessica once again appeared to die in this story, but she's resurrected by her ring and gains additional powers when it merges with her. This was detailed in the 25-issue-long series Justice League Odyssey. However, since that book ended in 2020, Jessica has, like her former partner, mostly been relegated to comic book limbo, as the Green Lantern title currently focuses primarily on Hal Jordan once again. However, with so many lanterns to choose from, I'm sure all of the replacements I've discussed over the past few months will once again get a chance to shine in the spotlight. In the meantime, if you'd like to see Jessica in animated action, I highly recommend Justice League vs. the Fatal Five, which brings Jessica into the DCAU and also contains Kevin Conroy's final performance as the voice of Batman. Well, that finally wraps up my replacement series on the Green Lantern. There are two other Earth-born Green Lanterns I didn't cover, as they really fall outside the replacement boundaries. But if you want to hear details on either Teen Lantern or the Green Lantern of the Far Sector, Joe Moline, be sure to let me know. You can email me with topics you want to hear covered, or comments on the show in general, to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, at gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown, Twitter @geektownpodcast, Mastodon @welcome-to-geektown@mastodon.social, or Blue Sky @welcome-to-geektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Lovitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material, their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.